Running around naked in public was one of the biggest and strangest trends of the 1970s.
Running around.
The attention-grabbing behavior swept across America, especially during sporting events and on college
That
campuses,
is mad.
and really peaked by the mid-70s.
Oh
The
my
craze led to
gosh.
tons of... If you had no car, it was no problem. All you had to do was stick out your thumb and wait for a kind stranger to pull over and offer you a ride.
All these things you be hearing about. Never in my life will I ever consider doing that. So different. That fashion is so different. It goes completely against what I know today. Alright guys, today we're fellow Gen Z Brit is going to be checking out 12 things gone forever in the 1970s. Life in America. This is coming from Recollection Road. You guys will know that I've checked out a few videos from their channel. They do so much of these kind of nostalgic throwbacks. So if you guys want to check the original video, link in the description below. As they check out their channel, which you can check through the video, then I would definitely recommend, because you know I've learned so much through these videos, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have enjoyed checking a lot of these out. I'm so curious to see what's gone forever. Obviously, me being born in the 2000s, you know, I would be very curious to see what was there before I was born, and maybe some of the things that I'd never really got to experience. Again, I've always been curious to see what kind of memories this may spark for some of you guys watching. Bonus content coming out on the Patreon. Just dropped a new movie reaction that I'll drop on the screen. But yeah, on my Patreon, I'll be doing some movie reactions, or I'm doing movie reactions, album reviews, and sitcom watch parties. So if you guys want to get a Gen Z perspective on some classics from the 70s and 80s, then I'll definitely consider checking out the Patreon linked in the description below, especially from a Gen Z perspective, because a lot of those things, oh my lord, it's been so cool seeing a lot of those things. But yeah guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as well as turn on those post notifications so you don't miss another one of these videos from me. And of course, don't forget to like the video so I know you guys want to see more, and let me know some other things you guys want me to check out. But with that being said, let's get straight into the video. Let's go. Let's recollect, man. Let's recollect. 12 things gone forever. 1970s.
During the 1970s, if you had no car, it was no problem. All you had to do was stick out your thumb and wait for a kind stranger to pull over and offer you a ride.
Wow.
For a free spirit, hitchhiking may have been the best option when your own 2 feet couldn't get you there. Since the 1970s, hitchhiking has been declining for a number of reasons,
I can imagine,
with safety being at the top of the list. Movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and real-life crime stories that occurred during the 70s had people looking for other ways to get around.
I can imagine. Obviously, I'm just thinking of the mad red alarm bells that are shaking in my head, or the red flags that are ringing and shaking in my head. I just butchered that whole saying. And yeah, the whole thought of hitchhiking nowadays, with all the information that you hear and the news about all these things we be hearing about, never in my life will I ever consider doing that. But obviously, this was something that people were doing back in the day, which is very interesting. And I feel like it's quite obvious probably as to why this quickly ended. Let me know if any of you guys have some hitchhiking stories, and maybe there's some interesting ones some of you guys might have to share.
Saturday morning was supposed to be about eating sugary cereals and watching cartoons with no educational value. But Schoolhouse Rock tricked us by teaching us multiplication, history, and the differences between conjunctions and interjections.
Right.
Thanks to their catchy songs, those watching knew all about the different branches of government and how a bill becomes a law without ever cracking open a book.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't even know the difference between a conjunction and... Do I know the difference? What did he say?
The differences between conjunctions and interjections.
Conjunctions and interjections. So I'm guessing that's like a language device or something like along them lines. See, I don't even know, man. See, maybe I need to be checking out some of these Schoolhouse Rock videos, man.
Thanks to their catchy songs, those watching knew all about the different branches of government and how a bill becomes a law without ever cracking open a book.
A conjunction, a word used to connect clauses or sentences. Okay. Okay, what, like and, but, oh, okay, so like and, but, if. Okay, that's a conjunction. Okay, so I didn't realize that was the word for it. Okay, fair enough.
And how a bill becomes a law without ever cracking open a book.
how a bill becomes a law. Interesting. I didn't even know that either.
Everything about the strange case of Patty Hearst, the granddaughter of publishing titan William Randolph Hearst, was like something out of a Hollywood movie, and many of us couldn't get enough. It started with her 1974 kidnapping, and then, even more shockingly, her new identity as Tanya joining forces with her captors to rob banks around San Francisco.
Oh.
As it played out on TV, it had all of us wondering, is this really happening?
Okay, that's wild. I think I've came across this story before. Never really looked into it. But this whole story, the fact that that's a real life story is wild. Like, I can imagine that's literally like straight out of a movie. Like, you wouldn't believe that that's actually real.
As it played out on TV, it had all of us wondering, is this really happening?
Right. That's wild. See her in handcuffs as well.
In the 1970s, opening a soda or beer can required pulling a ring that tore open a small wedge shape on the top of an aluminum can.
Really?
Then the ring would be thrown away, usually on the ground where somebody could step on it.
Huh.
Injuries from those metal tabs became a nationwide epidemic that had many of us wearing shoes to walk along the beach. The metal pull tabs began being phased out by the early 1980s, following the invention of the easy open stay tab.
Oh wow. Okay, I didn't know that. I've only seen these ones. So what are you saying about like having a ring thing that you can pull out and then, you know, people just dash on the floor type thing? You know, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Wow.
Television programming during the 1970s wasn't available around the clock.
Yeah.
At some point during the night, stations would sign off and use a test pattern graphic to signify they were off air.
Test pattern graphic.
Occasionally, they might use something more patriotic, like the American flag. But generally, that was the only viewing option for late-night viewers until around 6 a.m.
Okay.
Men and women in the 1970s were big on tight-fitting shirts, but
I've
more
seen
importantly,
this.
it had to have the largest and floppiest collars possible. These collars were double the size of a standard collar, and were often accompanied by an exposed hairy chest. This style could be found on shirts, leisure suits, and even jackets of the era. And if you did have a jacket on, you would make sure to flip the shirt collar to the outside of the jacket for an even more fashion-forward look.
You know, I want to try and find some more footage on some 1970s vlogs, but I remember going back to school in the 1970s, and these shirts with the collars and a button on top, undone, showing the chest hair was so common. Like, I kept seeing it, and that's so different. That fashion is so different. It goes completely against what I know today, with just more simple designs that don't draw too much attention. And if you do wear those kinds of things, you're probably going to be looked at as weird and tacky and cringy or something like that. But back in the day, that was something that was very much embraced. Like, fashion, I feel like has done a 180. If you do something like that now, you're standing out. You know, you're being more expressive, you're being more radical, which is interesting, man.
The outside of the jacket for an even more fashion-forward look. Sideburns were a popular counterculture style during the 1950s and 1960s, in direct response to the carefully groomed hairstyles of the greatest generation. But it wasn't until the late 60s and into the 70s that the masses grew them out to Civil War-era proportions.
Oh, wow.
Men like Richard Roundtree, Burt Reynolds, and Elvis Presley made wearing huge mutton chops an iconic 1970s look.
That's okay. Yeah, okay, so I didn't notice there's some huge sideburns, man. I didn't realize that was really a thing. Counterculture. Going against, like, you know, some of the more clean, formal, sophisticated looks from like the greatest gen. That's so interesting.
Burt Reynolds and Elvis Presley made wearing huge mutton chops an iconic 1970s look.
He did make it iconic, to be fair, by the looks of it.
Much like wallpaper from the 1970s, upholstery tended to be big, bright, and bold. Sofas during this decade were busy with floral patterns that used browns, oranges, and greens in every shade.
I still can't get
These
over
eye-catching
this.
living room centerpieces were in nearly every home of the day and fit right in with the wood paneling and shag carpet to give the room that classic 1970s feel.
Wow. Wow. Do you know, this makes me look at my grandma a bit differently, because when I remember going to like a grandma, or anytime I go to someone's house that's like older, like we're talking probably boomers here. Yeah, for the most part. Seeing some of them, I still see have these kinds of floral designed like furniture and stuff like that in their house. And when I see it, I'm like, it just reminds me of just like retirement. It reminds me of care home. Like, nah, like as much as I'm joking, there's like, I remember associating this kind of look with like older people is what I would say in my head. Obviously, now that I'm doing more of a deep dive, a lot older now, looking back at it, I'm looking at it a bit differently, man. I'm more curious, and now I can kind of see where it came from and just how much I guess it would have influenced that generation. Obviously, because nowadays you just don't really see that. So I appreciate it in its own way compared to what I used to.
The 1973 oil crisis hit wallets hard, and as fueling larger cars became more and more expensive, Americans switched to compact cars like the Ford Pinto, the AMC Gremlin, and the AMC Pacer.
Interesting.
Despite getting better gas mileage, all three cars were terribly ugly. Luckily, it didn't take the car makers long to realize their mistakes, and all three vehicles stopped production by 1980.
Wow. So that's interesting why they switched to those kinds of cars. Because of the oil crisis. I need to do a deeper dive into that, man.
The disco era was short-lived, but left an indelible mark on the 1970s with its music and fashion. What started in the clubs of New York City spread to all parts of the country when the movie Saturday Night Fever was released. The film brought disco to the masses and had many singing catchy tunes by ABBA, Donna Summer, The Village People, and the Bee Gees.
I can imagine. See, I like the disco scene, but like it seems like not many people did.
And the Bee Gees.
It was short-lived. From what I've heard, I might be misunderstanding that, but
running around naked in public was one of the biggest and strangest trends of the 1970s.
Running around.
The attention-grabbing behavior swept across America, especially during sporting events and on college campuses. That is
mad.
And really peaked by the mid-70s.
Oh,
the craze led to tons of novelty products hitting the market, like gag gifts and t-shirts, and it also inspired comedy songs like The Streak by Ray Stevens.
That was running around naked was a thing. Obviously, you probably get the police on you, like, you know, you get some charges on you if you did that now. Public nudity or whatever it falls under. But that is insane. So people could do that in the 70s, just run around naked. Or was it just people just being rebellious? What?
During the 70s, when neighbors went on vacation, there was a good chance that when they got home, you would be invited over to sit in the living room as they loaded slides into a carousel projector and then clicked through pictures of their entire trip. As they told painstakingly boring stories about each photo, all you could think about was the dust floating through the projector light or the occasional upside-down slide.
That's upside down slide. That's interesting that they would show pictures like that. Neighbors talking, just inviting you around.
If you enjoyed this video, check out the description for links that help support.
Yeah, and I guess that's interesting as well because, you know, the internet wasn't like back then, wasn't a thing. So I guess it probably would have been more cool to show people pictures of where you've been, like if you've been out of the country especially. You guys let me know if any of these brought back any memories. Like the 70s is just a period of time. Like this, when I go back to the 70s, I generally get shocked at just how different things were, and I keep getting like temporal shocks, and I just realized, wait a second, you could wait, sorry, this isn't now. Like now I got to put my 1970s goggles on and stop looking at things from how things are now. Like the 70s is still that period that just messes in my head, and the more I'm getting the more I'm doing these reactions, the more it slowly starts to make more sense. But yeah, no, this video makes sense because like majority of those things that he said that I didn't even know you could do, and I didn't even realize were much of a thing. But I guess it makes sense because, you know, the video's titled 12 Things Gone Forever. So I guess a lot of these things must have ended before I was even born. But that's interesting, man. And I'll be very curious to see what things this brought back for you guys, how true you think it was. Let me know down in the comments below. Of course, guys, comment on pink heart if you made this point. Let's go with pink today. Or hashtag flexer for those of you guys who made this point. So I know who my raw ones are. As always, guys, if you want to get more of these types of videos, me checking out the parts, especially the 70s, then consider checking out playlists. I'll link at the end of the video, as well as like the video before you heading out, because I know it's easy to forget. And of course, guys, look, I've been your boy JayFlex. This has been me checking out 12 things gone forever in the 1970s. And for those that made this point, you guys have been absolutely wonderful, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.